NBA team. So the Atlanta Hawks and the New York Knicks wrapped up their regular season series yesterday at the Garden. Trae Young was phenomenal. Hawks ended up beating the Knicks 117 to 111. And obviously, every time you see these two teams match up, you think about the first round playoff matchup last season that the Atlanta Hawks ended up winning in 5 games, right? It's almost hard to fathom those were the two teams in the first round of the playoffs last year. The Knicks were the 4 seed, the Atlanta Hawks were the 5th seed. And now we're seeing a huge disappointment from both of these sides this year. Now, let me first start with the New York Knicks in this respect, because I do want to talk about the Atlanta Hawks, but let me say this about the Knicks. I think that obviously we've all been disappointed in the New York Knicks, but to some degree, this isn't completely shocking, because what was shocking was them making the postseason and having the type of run that they did last year. Last year, no one expected the New York Knicks to make the postseason. No one expected that. So the fact that they went on that tear, the fact that they had bought in fully into Tom Thibodeau, they were defending at an extremely high level, the fact that Julius Randle was playing like an all-star, all-NBA type of player was a bit mind-boggling. So the fact that the team as a whole has kind of cratered back to reality isn't completely shocking this season why they've been struggling, because currently they're like 12th in the Eastern Conference right now. And Julius Randle, he's still been good. Listen, the guy's still averaging 20 points and 10 rebounds. So he's solidified his standing as a legitimate starter in the NBA, as a borderline all-star, sometimes an all-star depending on the season type of player. He's a bona fide kind of starter for sure. Is he the face of your franchise? No, he's not. Not to take away from him. There are just a handful of guys that are, but that's part of the reality. RJ Barrett, I love the way he's been playing. He's playing with a lot of confidence. He's not afraid of the moment. And the other thing about RJ Barrett that I think people misconstrue about him is they look at all the shot attempts and all they think about is, oh, this is someone who's probably selfish, just trying to jack up a lot of shots. I view it as less about that, and he's not afraid of the moment. He's got that killer mentality, and he's trying to elevate his game. He wants to be fearless. We've seen a bunch of games like that where he scored like 30 points in the first half against the Miami Heat in a road game. He's showing that promise. But okay, so he needs a little bit more help. Emmanuel Quickley, he's had his moments, just not consistent enough, hasn't popped enough. Evan Fournier, God bless Evan Fournier. 4 years, $73 million. What a job he did. What a ploy he did to land himself that contract. Note to self, play really well in international basketball against Team USA, and I'll land myself a multi-million-dollar contract. The guy looked like a superstar in France, this unbelievable closer and player. He was hitting tough turnarounds, spinning one-legged fadeaways against Team USA, and now with the Knicks, he is just average. But hey, all the power to Evan Fournier. Good for him for locking up that type of contract. I'm sad for Derrick Rose and for Kemba Walker. I'm sad for Derrick Rose that he hasn't been able to play much this year. I'm sad that Kemba Walker is dealing with chronic knee injuries. It's a shame, but that is what it is. But all of that made a little bit more sense to me. The team that surprised me has been the Atlanta Hawks, because yes, no one expected the Atlanta Hawks to go back to the Eastern Conference Finals. No one expected them to be the Eastern Conference Finals Atlanta Hawks good this year. But with that being said, no one expected them to be 10th in the Eastern Conference either. Right now, they're 10th in the Eastern Conference, 36-36 overall record. And they're behind a couple teams that it's just surprising given the personnel that they have on this team. Now, the reason, because I took a deeper dive into the Atlanta Hawks, because it shocked me why they've been playing the way that they've been playing. So the first glaring difference between this year and last year, they don't defend this year. They're 22nd in the NBA in points allowed versus, which isn't an atrocity, It's pretty bad. It's not good, obviously. Last year they were 12th in the NBA in points allowed, which was substantially better. They were kind of an underratedly good defensive team last year. They flew around, they contested a lot of shots, they've had length. And you look at the roster, and this year they're allowing opponents to shoot 47% from the floor. So nearly 50% of the time an opponent shoots a shot, it's going in. You're obviously not going to win games that way. That's worse than the Lakers, who is kind of the most apt comparison to the Atlanta Hawks right now, just barely treading water to stay alive in the play-in tournament. And you look at this roster, and you've got Trae Young, you've got John Collins, you've got Clint Capella, you've got healthy DeAndre Hunter back, you've got Kevin Huerter, you got Danilo Gallinari, you have Lou Williams, you have Gorgie Jang anchoring defensively off your bench. You've got a pretty good team. I like Timothy Luwawu-Cabarrot. I actually think he provides some good depth. And when you think back to those Atlanta Hawks from a season ago, the reason why they were so special was because Trae Young turned into a superstar in the postseason, and they had a lot more depth than most other teams. So they had a lot of scoring punch off the bench that they could turn to in the postseason. And Trae Young is still individually fantastic this year, 28 points, 9.5 assists, 4 rebounds per game, 45.5% field goal percentage. Maybe could be a touch higher, but I'm not going to kill the guy for it. 38% from three, 90% from the free throw line. He's doing his part. The problem is they started 4-9. They got off to a terrible start. They were 17-25 midway through the season by the first half mark. And they've been trying to climb uphill ever since. They've been riding the Stairmasters trying to get back up to 500 for about the last 30 games. So the problem is, if they were in the Eastern Conference last year, perhaps they're able to make that jump a little bit quicker, but it's a lot deeper this year. It's a hornet's nest this year in the Eastern Conference. That's just the reality. So you're not going to just climb up and usurp guys in front of you. It's not going to happen. They're too deep in the Eastern Conference this year. And that's why I wanted to compare the Hawks to some other teams, is because it's a little perplexing when you compare their roster to certain rosters, like the Cleveland Cavaliers, 6th in the NBA in the Eastern Conference in the standings. Now, the difference is the Cavaliers are a top 3 defensive team in the league. So that's allowed them to win games. You look at the personnel, though, Colin Sexton is out. So he was supposed to be ostensibly their best player coming into this year. Darius Garland is playing really well. He turned himself into an all-star. Obviously, Evan Mobley is one of the front runners for Rookie of the Year, might be the front runner for Rookie of the Year. He's been playing really well. Jared Allen has been playing exceptionally well. You have Karis LeVert, who joined the team mid-season, but he's been in and out of the lineup. Kevin Love, who's older. So that's who kind of makes up the Cleveland Cavaliers for the most part. Obviously, Cedi Osman coming off the bench. There's some other guys off the bench, but is that really better than the Atlanta Hawks roster to me? No, but they play defense. That's been the difference. They play defense. Same thing with the Toronto Raptors. The Raptors starting 5 is very good. It is very good. Pascal Siakam, Scotty Barnes, who's been fantastic. Another sure to be vote getter for Rookie of the Year. Fred VanVleet, who's been an all-star. OG Anunoby has been playing really, really well. And Gary Trent Jr., of course, has had some explosive performances this year, multiple 30-point games for Gary Trent Jr. That trade for Powell and Gary Trent Jr. with the Portland Trailblazers has worked out beautifully for them. So their starting 5 is formidable, but they don't have much of a bench. But Nick Nurse gets them playing hard defensively, and they're a much more efficient team in the half court than the Hawks are. But again, you look at personnel, and you're saying, I don't really understand why the Hawks can't be better than this team record-wise, but they are. Same thing with the Charlotte Hornets, who are ahead of them right now in the 7th spot. I absolutely love LaMelo Ball. I love LaMelo Ball. Miles Bridges is in the running for most improved player in the NBA. Obviously, they still have Scary Terry Rozier. Gordon Hayward, he is a part of the team, but he's missed about a third of the games with an injury. And Kelly Oubre is decent. He's decent. But then you look on the bench, they've got PJ Washington, Mason Plumlee, Montrezl Harrell. Nice pieces, but not necessarily a great roster. So the Hawks should be better. They should be a 6 or a 7 seed in the Eastern Conference, but they're not because they're not defending. For whatever reason, they're not quite as connected. Nate McMillan doesn't have them playing quite as together this year. And I'm not going to blame it or heap all the blame on Nate McMillan because the job that he did last year to turn around that franchise when they were struggling below 500 was phenomenal. And their second half run was probably the best second half run by a team in the NBA last year. But this year they started off slowly. They seem to be more about individual stats as opposed to collective achievements. And for whatever reason, there's just been a lack of cohesion on the team this year. And I think it started off because there was confusion about players' roles. They had too many guys playing the same position. Cam Reddish was trying to play the same position as Kevin Huerter. DeAndre Hunter was coming back. One of those guys had to go. They got rid of Cam Reddish. They had a lot of shooters on the team, a lot of scorers on the team. And sometimes every season presents its own challenges. And for whatever reason this year, you just haven't had the same unity. And that's kind of been the difference. So it's been shocking how they've struggled so much this year. They're in the play and they're hanging on for dear life in the 10th spot. I'd love to see them scoot up a little bit because I'd like to see them actually in the playoffs. I'd like to see Trae Young in the playoffs. So we'll have to wait and see.